Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, which is hosted by the Cape Town Science Centre. My name is Philip Engelbrach, and tonight we'll be doing a webinar on evidence-based science. Now, we have a speaker tonight, and before we even introduce our speaker, I just want to go over some nice information about us, some very interesting information. So, our speaker tonight is Rushdah Hartley, and she is a qualified speech and language pathologist who graduated from the University of Cape Town in 2009. She also holds a master's in early childhood intervention from the University of Pretoria and has over 10 years of clinical experience within the public, private, as well as corporate sector. She's very passionate about working with persons who have disabilities, and her interests especially lie in early childhood intervention as well as augmentative and alternative communication. Rushda is currently employed as a lecturer as well as a BA Honours Program Manager at the Centre for Augmentative and Alternative Communication, which is based within the Faculty of Humanities at the University of Pretoria. Right? So, Rushda, you may take the stage and welcome.
Thanks so much, Philip. That was a mouthful, hey?
Thank you.
AAC. Thank you so much. I appreciate the introduction.
Pleasure.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks, Philip. Good evening, everyone. I'm very excited to be here this evening to introduce to you the topic of augmentative and assistive communication, as well as within evidence-based practice. I'm just going to share my screen. I'm going to share my presentation with you. Just let me know if you can see it. If you can just unmute yourself and just let me know, Philip, or anyone else from the team, if you can see my presentation, because I can't see the chat, please.
Hi there, Rushda. We are able to
Hi.
see the presentation.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Thanks. Okay. So because I've got quite a bit to get through, I think we can jump right in. So like I said before, the topic is transforming lives through evidence-based practice. I'm very excited to be with you all this evening. Philip really introduced me to you already, but I'm currently, like he said, I am a lecturer at University of Pretoria at the Centre for Augmentative and Alternative Communication. And the centre is based within the Faculty of Humanities at the University of Pretoria. So just to give you a little bit of background in terms of the center that I work for, it was founded in fact, almost 30 years ago by Prof. Erna Alant in conjunction with Prof. Lyde Lloyd from the USA. And Prof. Erna Alant is in fact now based within the USA at a different university. But really the need for the impetus to start the center in the first place was really because of a concern from parents requesting better and more coordinated service delivery for their children who have severe disabilities. So the center initially started out just sort of providing direct service delivery to these children with disabilities. It then expanded from that to include training and education through degree and non-degree courses. So research was also added, and that obviously provided sort of the evidence-based aspect of the center right now. And we are, currently mobilizing. We are doing a lot of work within research within the field of severe disabilities, AAC, and early childhood intervention. So just to introduce the team to you at the center, these are my colleagues. So the team really includes both sort of senior academic staff, emerging academics like myself, lecturers, disability advocates, and administrative support staff. The lady in the very center with the black, she is Professor Shakila Dada. She is our center director. And then she is flanked by senior staff, Prof. Kirsten Tonsing in the red, Prof. Juan Bornman, Prof. Alicia Samuels, the lady with the boots. She is our disability advocate, Ms. Constance Ntuli, and then Terence on the far end next to me, and Lisa right at the far end. They are support staff. And Miss Maureen Cassie, that's standing next to me, she is part of the honors program, and she lectures with me within that program. So the outcomes of the webinar this evening, I'm really wanting to sort of introduce the audience to assistive technology and augmentative and alternative communication, because I know a lot of these terms are very new to most people within the audience. We're really going to be looking at exploring the importance of evidence-based practice within the field of severe disabilities, and also demonstrating how these intervention strategies can really transform the lives of persons with disabilities, and more specifically with complex communication needs. Right, so before we can get into all the nitty-gritty, I think it's important that we sort of think about and just reflect on how you access your world currently. So you can type this in the chats, or you can sort of just think about it. How do you currently access the world? What are the kind of things that you use in terms of technology? And I mean, a lot of you, I've given some hints on the screen, but already, I mean, everyone has a cell phone. You use a laptop, a tablet. Persons with physical disabilities may access their world by means of a wheelchair. Other forms of technology could even be by using a motorized vehicle. So really, when it comes to access and when it comes to the use of accessibility and technology, it's not only for persons with disabilities. We are all using different means of technology in order to access our world around us. So if we move sort of a step further and look at exactly what accessibility means, and you can see in the image that I have on the screen right now, it really is the design of products, of devices, of services, and even our environments for people who experience disabilities. And if you think of accessibility in terms of persons with disabilities, often we think about things like wheelchair ramps, braille signage, elevators, audio signals at pedestrian crossings. I don't know if you've heard that before. If you press the buttons, it'll beeping sound. That's often for persons that are blind or low vision. Things like web design is different, reading accessibility. So these are all different ways in which persons with disabilities can access their world. But accessibility really is very strongly related to universal design. And what universal design really is, it's the process of creating different products for persons to use with disabilities, where they can operates within the widest possible range of situations, making things accessible to all people, whether they have a disability or not. So already I'm kind of painting the picture for you in terms of how accessibility is really all encompassing, and it affects both persons that are typically developing and those that have disabilities. Okay, so now we're moving into assistive technology. Okay, and we're looking at maybe defining what assistive technology is. Okay, so with assistive technology, it really is the application of organized knowledge and skills related to assistive products, systems, and services. Again, to reiterate, if we think of different types of assistive technology, we're really looking at ways in which we can maintain or improve an individual's functioning and ultimately the independence, right? So we're looking at promoting their sense of well-being. And again, we're looking at things like hearing aids, wheelchairs, communication aids, spectacles, prosthesis, medication organizers, pill organizers. That's also a form of assistive technology. Even memory aids. These are all examples of different types of assistive products. And the focus of this evening, even though there's a range of different forms of assistive technology, we're going to be focusing purely on communication and how evidence-based practice or evidence-based science is implemented in both assessment and intervention. Okay. Right, so let's look at AAC, but we're going to start off just by defining the word communication and what that actually entails. So communication really is a process in which, information is exchanged between individuals through a common system. And the common system may be through symbols or signs or behavior. So it really is an exchange of information and ultimately creating shared meaning, right? So the typical communication theory really states that communication involves a sender and a receiver, right? Somebody that is um, giving the message across to you, and you then as the receiver is accepting the message, and the message that is being given across by the sender, it can take sort of different forms. So it can be in the form of um, verbal, so you can be speaking to the individual. It could be through gesturing. Persons that are not able to speak, it could be through sign language. So there really are different forms and different ways in which a person is able to engage in communication. But if we move towards persons with severe disabilities or with complex communication needs, the image on your screen right now really shows what is happening with them, right? So it really is a person that they're thinking a lot, they've got quite a lot to say, but because of their impairment or because of their disability, and the comorbidity of that is a complex communication need, they are experiencing communication vulnerability. Okay, so thinking a lot, having a lot to say, but unfortunately, because there's a communication breakdown, they experience communication vulnerability and they're not able then to communicate. And let's think about how that makes an individual feel if they're not able to communicate. They cannot convey their basic needs and wants, cannot tell stories, relate events. Think about how, this is something that is so second nature to us. Every day you come home from work and you need to tell your partner, your family member or friend what's happening, how your day was. Throughout the day, you're texting, sending messages, making calls. Um, Persons with disabilities also cannot communicate the emotions effectively. Relationship building is negatively affected. The independence and learning is affected. So think about how a person with a disability that affects the communication, how there's an element of mental health that's quite hugely affected as well. And the last point that I just want to pause on, I included there a high risk for abuse and neglect. A silent victim is the perfect victim. And this is unfortunately what is happening very scarily. And even the statistics around this in South Africa is alarming. Because if you think about it, somebody that is severely physically disabled, coupled to that, has a communication impairment, it really makes them the perfect victim. The perpetrator sees them as a perfect opportunity to take advantage of the situation. And a lot of the senior academic staff at the center that I work for right now is really doing sort of remarkable work in assisting with different court cases and advocacy for persons or for victims of sexual abuse, because unfortunately this is a reality for us in South Africa. Okay, so what is augmentative and alternative communication? Okay, so the acronym for that is AAC. So AAC, let me just go back. Okay, so AAC really, if we take a look at that, it really is an area of research, clinical, and educational practice, and it involves attempts to study and, when necessary, compensate for temporary or permanent impairments. Okay, so to to simplify that long explanation, if we think of temporary impairment, so it really is it's a way of us using different forms of technology in order to assist a person that has a disability that's affecting their communication for them to communicate essentially better, right? So you have individuals that either have a temporary loss of communication, and then you have those that have more of a permanent impairment. So a typical example of somebody that has a temporary loss of communication, if I think back to my clients that I had at an assistive tech company I worked with before, I had a client at Vincent Pallotti Hospital. He was in surgical ICU, and he had sustained quite a severe spinal cord injury. Um, so with any type of spinal cord injury, the higher up the spine the injury is, the more severe it is. So he was really at a C2, C3. So he was completely paralyzed from shoulders down all the way. And with him, he had to have a tracheostomy inserted. A tracheostomy is really just a breathing tube that was put into his neck. And because it was put into his neck, that was obviously an obstruction where he then couldn't communicate. But the tracheostomy is really just temporary because he was in ICU. So what he then needed was just a temporary form of communication. And that's when I then came in and I did an assessment, and I think we actually agreed on some kind of head control device or eye gaze. It was a while ago, but again, it was just something temporary for him. He was a businessman. He still wanted to do his banking. He still wanted to book his family's flights overseas. So he didn't want his impairment to stop him from engaging in, everyday activities. So it was quite remarkable to see how in implementing AAC, we were able to still make him sort of functional, even within that circumstances. Okay, so that's temporary. Whereas somebody that has a permanent impairment really is persons with severe disabilities. So person maybe that has severe sort of cerebral palsy, and now they're unable to communicate, and this is where we may then introduce AAC to them, but it would be then lifelong. Okay, so that is what AAC is, but I think it's also important for us to know why AAC is important. Okay, so AAC really reduces frustration and isolation. It can facilitate speech and language development. It can facilitate entrance into literacy for persons that are at school. Um, it also provides different communication contexts and partners. And I think ultimately, for AAC it really facilitates interactions and greater independence. So we're really looking at the autonomy of the person with a disability. And again, with communication, it really needs to be seen as both a basic human right as well as a basic human need. Think about how even your voice and your accent is really part of you. It makes you who you are. It's part of your personality. So we really need to view it in sort of through that lens. Okay, so I'm sure that, excuse me, some of you are familiar with the individual on the screen right now. So that is Dr. Stephen Hawking. Quite impressively, if you look at the far bottom end, it's his signature, and that was a signature that he actually did through eye gaze, which is remarkable. So you can actually see in the picture that he is in his wheelchair, and he's got a sort of a dynamic display eye gaze device that's been mounted to his wheelchair. And it's amazing how much he was able to do just by using his eye gaze device. Okay, so that is Dr. Stephen Hawking. He's a English theoretical physicist. And I just want to read to you what his take was on speech and communication. So he said that for millions of years, mankind lived just like the animals. Then something happened which unleashed the power of our imagination. We learned to talk and we learned to listen. speech has allowed the communication of ideas, enabling human beings to work together to build the impossible. Okay, so what Stephen Hawking is really doing there is he's really acknowledging the power of speech and the power of communication. And I think even more so in terms of his circumstances, the fact that he had a progressive degenerative disorder and had lost his voice completely, and through high tech technology, he was able to then regain his form of communication. Okay. Right. So taking us again back to evidence-based science or evidence-based practice, again, I'm going to be using evidence-based practice more than evidence-based science. It pretty much means the same thing, but the only reason why I'm using EBP is because that is the evidence-based practice is what we use within allied health. Medical doctors would use evidence-based medicine. So it pretty much means the same thing. But the reason why I've got the two conventions on the screen right now is because, for us as practitioners and researchers, to maintain some form of evidence-based practice, and especially in the field of AAC, it's really important that we uphold the principles of both sort of local and international policies and frameworks, and that really guides our intervention practices. So the two conventions that we look towards when implementing any form of intervention is the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, so the CRC, and then also the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, so that is the CRDP. Okay, so with the CRC, generally what we're looking at there is really that it acknowledges that children with disabilities require additional or different forms of support to enjoy their rights. Okay, so principles of CRC looking at non-discrimination, looking at the best interest of the child, survival and development, and really respect for the view of the child as well. Okay, so allowing them that form of autonomy. And then with the CRDP, which is the second one, we sort of focus specifically on Article 21. And Article 21 really looks at the freedom of expression and opinion and access to information. And this is really about sort of individuals with disabilities looking at accepting and facilitating the use of sign language, Braille, AAC, focusing on the individual's own choice, that they have access to information and services, that they have access to mass media. Think about that. How often do you see on the television news or broadcasts is there a little person that is signing, right? For me, I often think that you've got the president, a big picture of the president on the screen, and then you've got this little insert of a person that is signing. Typically, you should have the image of the person signing way bigger than the president speaking, because this president speaking, we can hear what he's saying. But in terms of this person that's signing, we actually need to see, or the person that is deaf actually needs to see them signing. So often I always think that they should actually do it the other way around. But again, it's about access to mass media as well, and also recognizing and promoting the use of sign language. Okay, and that also means sign language, lip reading, closed captioning on screens as well. Okay, so it's all encompassing. So that's international literature. And then if we look towards something sort of more local literature, just checking my time, more local literature, it really is about looking towards more current policies and frameworks, okay, regarding accessibility and assistive technology. So locally, those that are in the audience that are educators or teachers, I'm sure you will be familiar with the CS document, so the Policy on Screening, Identification and Assessment, Education White Paper 6, as well as a draft national norms for standards for resourcing and inclusive education system. So these are the different types of policies and frameworks that we look towards that really sort of underpins what we do as allied health professionals, as researchers, and again, just us sort of upholding the principle of evidence-based practice. Okay, so this moves yeah, so we're moving into what evidence-based practice actually is. So what it is, it's really just a process of promoting practitioner accountability. And that's even why as allied health professionals, regardless of what sector we work in, whether it's private, public, hospitals, schools, even for myself as an academic now working at a university, we always have to be registered every year with the HPCSA. And also uphold a certain amount of CPD points, which is professional development points, to uphold this, a practitioner accountability. And we do this evidence-based practice through integrating best and current research evidence, looking at stakeholder perspectives, and looking at integrating clinical and educational expertise. Okay, so with the first one, we do that a lot at the center because we're based at a university. We're constantly looking at current research evidence, stakeholder perspectives. That really is looking at the individual that's actually using the AAC device and really empowering them to make informed decisions, and they are actually part of the decision making process. So they would be a direct stakeholder. You'd have indirect stakeholders as well, such as the family members, caregivers, friends, and then also community stakeholders as well. We have to look towards, the resources within the community, and that again would be, the teachers, the employers, or the person with a disability, home workers, sort of things like that. And then number three, looking at clinical expertise. So for me as a speech therapist, I need to maintain a certain level of quality in terms of the clinical work that I do. Okay. And again, with evidence-based practice, it really is important because again, it promotes the use of research-based practices. Um, and with the second one I included, often we do, I think there's a saying that goes, especially with researchers or academics, is that we do a really good job at observing the problem. So we'll study it, we'll observe it, but there's always that research practice gap in terms of implementation. And I think even more so within South Africa, just because of the fragmentation of services. So we're really, with evidence-based practice, we're really trying to narrow that research practice gap. And this is top priority for us at the Center for AAC as well. That's why we engage in both research practice and clinical work. Okay. And then thirdly, I just said that evidence that interventions have a good chance of producing a desired outcome. Okay, so again, it's important that, above and beyond doing all this research, it's important that you can actually see the desired outcome. And that's why a little bit towards later in the presentation, I've got some videos that I am going to be showing you that's really going to give you proof of how assistive technology actually assists persons with disabilities. Okay. So with AAC technology, you can really see it on a continuum. So you have sort of what we refer to as low-tech technology, um, and that is just sort of communication boards. So it would be like a flip file or a little board, and it would have little pictures on it. And the child, maybe that's nonverbal, they would be able to point to an icon or a symbol on the board. So if it's a little toilet, and then maybe the teacher will then be aware that they want to go to the toilet, or a picture of a bottle to say that they're thirsty. So I go to toilet, I'm hungry, I'm thirsty, they want to play, what they want to play with. So we refer to it as low tech because there's no real sort of technology involved with that. And then with the middle technology, the middle section, that's usually where we move more into sort of speech generating devices. So again, it's a device that has pictures or images on it. But if you press the little button, there is some form of voice output where you can actually record your voice. Okay. Again, I have some examples of this on videos that can just give you a better idea of what middle technology looks like. And then if we move sort of further along the continuum, in terms of high technology, that is really looking at what sort of Dr. Stephen Hawking, what he was using. So we're looking at more sort of dynamic display, eye gaze devices, head control devices, where you are using maybe a laptop or a tablet or even an iPad, and it has communication software built in, and then using that as a form of communication. Okay, so really across a continuum. Okay. So I've explained low and high tech, low tech, not really using any form of technology, and then high tech, sort of more looking at the eye gaze and head control devices. Okay. Here are just some more images of what it looks like in terms of low technology. Okay, so like I said, the picture boards with the symbols on it, where the child can point to what they want or what they need if they're nonverbal, and obviously in terms of access, if they're able to point. And then we also have different types of electronic, we would say it's electronic mid-tech, but that would again be sort of just single message devices. So if you press on the little red icon, there would be some form of voice output. Okay. And then just some examples of high technology, again with its tablet or an iPad, and then with the communication software loaded onto it. And then you can then access it either via direct touch or with eye gaze or head control. All right. So I've got a few videos lined up now just to give you an idea of the different types of assistive technology. The first video that you're going to watch right now. So this young girl has she's got autism. Okay, so she is nonverbal. And the video really demonstrates the young girl communicating with her communication partner, which is a teacher. And she uses sort of a multimodal approach to communication. So what that means is that you'll see her using her communication, low-tech communication file. She's using a little bit of vocalizations, and you can see a teacher's just really trying to mimic and encourage her to communicate. Okay, so I'm gonna just minimize my screen and stop sharing, because I think the team is going to assist me with my videos.
Okay, I have my words in here. Let me put the words up here so you can reach them. And why don't you pick something out of my bag? Can you pick something out? Or do you want to choose off of here? What do you have to tell me? I want bubbles? Absolutely. Let me find my bubbles. Here they are. Here's my bubbles. Do you want to blow bubbles? Bubbles are for blowing. Do you want to blow? Or do you want me to blow? You want to blow. Ready? Set, blow. Do you need some help? Help? Can I help you?
Teachers, if I could have your attention for expediency, and I know I'm...
Oh, did he get on your eyes?
Third, fourth, and fifth grade.
Oh, are you all done? Do you want more
Start letting the
bubbles?
third grade. Teachers,
More?
look out the window.
Okay, let's
We
do
need to
more.
pack
Do you do
full.
more or all done? All done? Should we do something different? You want cars? Let's get out the cars. Good. Here's the cars. Oh. Should we drive the cars on the road? Look here. We'll drive them right here. Can you do it? Can you drive the cars? Drive them on the road. Cars. Drive. Ready? You did it. Can you do more? What do you want to tell me? Hi. Play. Bubbles. You want to play bubbles? Or stack blocks?
No.
Maracas. I want maracas. I'm going to find the maracas. Here they are. Do you want some?
No.
Say, I want maracas. Do you want some? Do you want to sing with it? Okay, here they are. Here's the maracas and we'll sing, okay? Ready? So what do we want to sing? Do you want to sing bingo or row your boat? Row? Okay. Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 life is but a dream. Do you want more? Row again. Okay, ready? Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 life's but a dream. We did it! High five! Do you want to do more maracas? More maraca? Or all done? Oh, you're telling me more. Ready? Should we do wheels on the bus? The wheels on the bus go round and round, round and round, round and round. The wheels on the bus go round and round, all through the town. All right, all done with maracas. Let's see what else we can find. Can we find something else to play? What are we going to play now? Let's see. We're going to play something else. Find something in there. What are you going to find? What are you going to find? What's in there? Oh, what did you find? You found a book.
No, not till the end of September. Oh,
You found a book.
yeah.
Da-da-da. You need to read? Should we read the book? Read the book? Read the book? You're happy and you know it, clap your hands. If you're happy and you know it, and your face will surely show it. If you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. That's a singing book. It's a singing book. Are you all done? Are you ready to go play with your friends? Oh, you want to pick something else? Tell me. More play. Play. More. You want to shake something? Let's see if there's something in there to shake. What is in there, Liluz? Oh, you got your... It flipped. Here, try that again.
That was silly.
That was silly, Marla. What did you find? You found a book. You did find a book. What do we do with a book? Do we drive or read? We read a book. I will read it. Five silly monkeys jumping on the bed. One fell up and bumped his head. Mama called the doctor and the doctor said, no more monkeys jumping on the bed. How many now? 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 little monkeys jumping on the bed. One fell off and
I'll be over in just a second.
bumped his head. Mama called.
Okay.
Okay, I have my words in here. Let me put the words up here so you can reach them.
Right, so the first video was obviously just an example of low-tech technology. The second video, we're going to be looking at, sorry, Haley, you can just move to the next video. The second one.
Okay, I have my words in here. Let me put the words up here so you can reach them. And why don't you pick something out of my bag? Can you pick something out? Or do you
Haley,
want
the
to choose
second
off of
video,
here? What do
please.
you have to tell me?
Yeah, so just before you started, just hold on. Thanks. So with the second video, this is really demonstrating a carer playing with a child with a very sort of a marked functional limitation. So you can see that the first video showed the little girl using a very low-tech communication picture board, but he's going to be using a speech generating device. So he's going to use his hand to press on the device gently, and then there's going to be some form of voice output. Okay.
And on that farm he had a dog with woof woof here and a woof woof there. Here a woof, there a woof, everywhere a woof woof. Old MacDonald had a farm. And on that farm he had a duck with a quack quack here and a quack quack there. Here a quack, there a quack, everywhere a quack quack. Old MacDonald had a farm. And on that farm he had a horse. You gotta tell me. With a neigh here and a neigh there, here a neigh, there a neigh, everywhere a neigh, neigh. Old MacDonald had a horse. And on that farm he had a chicken.
Let's try and
With the cluck cluck here and a cluck cluck there, here a cluck, there a cluck, everywhere a cluck cluck. Old MacDonald had a farm. And on that farm he had a cat. With the meow here.
remix. Okay, fantastic. What I really appreciate about this particular video is how it actually mimics very typical interaction of a caregiver with an infant or toddler. It's really demonstrating serve and return. He's maintaining eye contact, there's joint attention, turn taking. So it really is fantastic how AAC is able to support the pragmatics of the child in terms of their sort of early pre-linguistic skills. Okay, the next video is taking it, bringing it home. So it's a little child with also with a physical disability, and it was taken at a local. Yeah, it was taken at a local care center in Gauteng. And this little boy is also engaging in a song activity using cause and effect. And he's using also a sort of a middle tech speech generating device, sorry, with voice output.
Jesus. Step by step, step by step, I will follow Jesus. I will follow Jesus. Happy, I will follow Jesus. Happy, 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 I will follow Jesus. Step by step, step by step, I will follow Jesus. La paix? Mais bon, passe à la paix. Go for that. Go for la paix. Go for it. Put it close again. Go for I will follow Jesus. Step by step, step by step. I will follow Jesus. Happy, happy, happy. I will follow Jesus.
She's like, come on.
Do you want to do it again? I will follow Jesus.
Step by step, step by step.
Push it closer. Bring it closer to her. I will follow Jesus.
Okay, Haley, I think we can just skip the next video because I just want to move into, you can skip over this one just for the sake of time. Okay, so with this particular video is, it's a individual, it's a 14-year-old male with cerebral palsy, and he is now using something more high tech. So he's using a dynamic display, it's not an eye gaze device, it's a touchscreen device with communication software. Even though he has cerebral palsy, he has utilization of his hand and his finger. And this particular communication software has both symbols and text-based communication. So you can see how he uses it to communicate.
What type of food do you enjoy?
Hamburger.
Yeah. Hamburgers.
McDonald's ones. No.
Which one?
Actually, so
What else do you
Pepper.
want? Pepper? You want pepper?
What
What else do you want?
what else?
Orange.
You don't even like it.
Okay, so it's organized into categories.
What
It's
else?
organized by category.
Okay, it's a cake.
You can also, if you go like that, there
You
might be
swipe
more
up or
options.
up?
I think.
Swipe up. Not
Yeah.
like that. Put your nails on. Put your... There you
Ah.
go.
Pretzels.
Where's pizza?
Pizza.
Nice. Do you want to clear everything? Nice. And do you want to go, if you want to go back to the keyboard or back to the one that just does the speaking and no writing, that's this one over here. And that's the keyboard over there.
I'm gonna go to the keyboard. Can I write a name? Or anything else, Mika? Say nothing.
Okay, so you could see that he was actually very successfully using his high-tech eye gaze device, and he was using both symbols as well as text-based communication as well. I think there's a second part to this video, Haley. Is that the full video? Yeah, you can play that, please.
Or anything else, Mika? Say nothing.
M.
Don't look at me.
I.
Don't look at me.
K. E.
There's Leah.
Oh dear, you got to type it all from the start because you cleared the whole word.
So this one deletes the whole thing.
Yeah.
Keanu,
Yeah.
this one deletes everything in here. This one just, you can go back one.
L.
Leah.
E. A. B.
The other one. H. Yeah, it's H. No, you cleared it now.
Okay, so the videos was really just a demonstration of how effective augmentative and alternative communication is for all ages, really, for those that are infants and toddlers, all the way to young children, young adults like this 14-year-old boy, and even geriatric population as well, those that perhaps have progressive degenerative disorders. Okay, thanks, Heidi. This next slide. Okay, so if we move into just eye tracking, I've just got a few slides left. I know we're nearing the end of the presentation. So with eye tracking, very similar to what Dr. Stephen Hawking was using, really what that is that it's a way of accessing your computer or your communication device using a mouse, and that you control the mouse with your eyes. So what it is, it's a sort of a peripheral eye tracker that you would attach to either a tablet or a laptop. And through calibration, it would pick up the pupil of your eye, and you'd then be able to navigate within communication software. You'd be able to navigate within Windows control, computer control. So literally everything and anything that we can do as so-called able-bodied persons, an individual that uses eye gaze and uses eye gaze effectively would be able to do it as well. Okay. Typically, the candidates for this are those with ALS, so motor neuron disease, TBIs, traumatic brain injuries, cerebral palsy, multiple sclerosis, muscular dystrophy, and any kind of spinal cord injury as well. Okay. So typically then individuals with severe sort of motor challenges, and the only way that they can access is through eye gaze. Next slide, please, Haley. And then there's also different forms of switch use. So again, switches you can really use to navigate or operate things within your environment. So you can use a switch to operate a wheelchair for mobility, to operate a communication device, a computer. Persons with severe disabilities have even used switches to operate different forms of environmental control. So think of things like lights and blinds. I've got a friend of mine who is able to, access his environment through environmental control, open and close his blinds, switch his TV on and off, put his lights on and off. So really, the possibilities are really endless. Next slide, please, Heidi. Okay, and then if we just move just quickly into the different forms of voice output, so you probably would have picked up that with some of the speech generating devices, it is a voice that is recorded. So we would typically press on a button, we can record our voice, and then there's some form of voice output. And then with communication software, that is more sort of synthetic speech. So that is where it's sort of using some, different types of a cappella voices, different types of accents, male and female accents. So you get the two types of speeches. You get the digital speech where you can record into the device, and then you get the synthetic speech, which is built in with the speech engine software. We've been really fortunate within South Africa. We now have the Q-Frincy South African Voices, which is localized South African voices. So now our persons with disabilities can now access South African accents. They can access South African languages in all 11 official languages, both male and female. So that is really fantastic in terms of bringing things back home, localizing products to make them more accessible and just more in terms of cultural appropriateness as well. What I find specifically I find very fascinating about the synthetic speech is that it's really moved above and beyond in terms of expectations. So not only is it just speech that is using different forms of a cappella voices, but there is a part of synthetic speech that we refer to as voice or message banking. I engaged in a lot of this with clients when I worked for an assistive tech company. And what this is that if a person has a progressive degenerative disorder, so I'm talking about those with MND, I'm talking about those with maybe severe levels of dementia or Alzheimer's disease, and they're slowly losing their voice. They can engage in some form of message banking, and really essentially what it is, it's banking your voice, right? So they can speak into the speech engine and record their accent, record their voice through words, phrases, and then come the time in which their diagnosis has progressed to a point that they no longer have their voice. They are now able then to tap into that message banking, the voice banking, pull that through into the communication software, and ultimately then speak in inverted commas using their own voice. So that really it's amazing how far technology has taken us in terms of really being able to uphold the individual's level of dignity, of autonomy, and still making them, still feel like they are themselves, even though they, unfortunately have to deal with some form of disorder or disability. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so that brings me to the end of my presentation. I know I've taken you through a lot, lots to think about, lots of food for thought. But I hope that it was insightful, just giving you an idea of what types of assistive technologies is currently out there, and also how we as practitioners, as researchers, as academics, how we look towards and really, we value the importance of evidence-based practice, of evidence-based science, really to essentially make the lives of persons with disabilities more functional, so that they can live a life with dignity. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for that lesson, Rushda. It was really, really interesting. And our audience do have a few questions for you that, if you have time, could you answer it for us, please?
I have time, yes.
Okay.
Definitely.
Thank you. So our first question is from a person named Yamkele, and she asks, how affordable and accessible are these AACs?
Okay, thank you for that question. Really good question. So it really depends. Some of the low-tech devices are obviously a lot more accessible because that really is just paper-based. The more high-tech devices, obviously, because of we're getting a lot of the products from overseas, so mainly from Sweden. That's one of our biggest assistive tech companies. That's when the price now increases. But our two assistive tech companies that is based in South Africa, they have a tender running. So the tender is part of National Treasury. And what this tender does is that it gives all special needs schools and hospitals in all different provinces access to assistive tech at a much more affordable price, because they get that subsidy from government. So there is that option as well. But yeah, some of the high tech things can get quite pricey.
Okay. We have another question from a person named Abungile, and she asked, for the low tech picture boards, are there different levels for these? And do you guys only provide it, or can it be bought at a specific store?
Okay, I love these questions. Great questions. So yes, with low-tech technology, it is graded. So typically somebody that's just been introduced to low-tech, it would be just a photographic symbol. So that's even something that a teacher could take a picture of something, of the toilet or the bottle, and then print it out and then put that on the communication board. So we start with photographs. It's the most accessible or easier to see in the eye. Then we go into different types of symbols. There's different types of symbols that a child can access, and then we move then into, if the child's literate, it would be words. They can access it. There's two assistive technology companies. If the individual that's asking the question would like details on that, they can just email me. But there are assistive tech companies in South Africa that they can then reach out to for information on low tech.
Okay, thank you so much.
Sure.
Two more questions.
Okay.
This is a really interesting one. Did you ever have to teach someone maybe Braille or sign language or something of that sort?
That's a great question, but that is unfortunately not my area of expertise.
Okay.
Definitely a jack of all trades, not a master of all of them. But yeah, I've had colleagues that have had opportunity, really blind colleagues at an assistive tech company that I worked for, and he actually used a high tech eye gaze, not eye gaze software, screen reading software. So what happens is the screen would actually have software that will tell him exactly what's happening on the screen. It will have some kind of voice output. Okay, so that's amazing. All right, can we get the next question, please?
I'm sorry, we are having difficulties with the camera.
Okay, sure.
I'm just trying to make out this last question.
Okay.
Just give me a second. Sorry. Are there any other facilities that are present in Cape Town?
Facilities. Okay.
Yeah,
So
for AAC, ma'am.
okay, sure. So our at the Center for AAC, we are currently the only facility that runs postgraduate training in AAC. There
Okay.
aren't any others. But obviously there is ongoing workshops and courses that individuals can attend. But in terms of any kind of postgrad studies and degree programs, the Center for AAC is the only one currently that's in our country.
Okay,
Okay.
okay. And
Okay.
then one more question. How was this is actually from me personally,
Okay.
but how was for instance like Stephen Hawking able to communicate sentences so quickly? You know, did he um have a screen that had words on it, or did he like literally think of it, or how
Mm,
was he able to communicate full
yeah.
sentences with quite ease?
Yeah, it's a good question. Thanks, Philip. So with any kind of eye gaze software, it really is dependent on the person's level of literacy. Obviously, the man was a physicist, so
Genius.
he
Yeah.
was incredibly smart. So with
Mm.
him, he probably used not an entry-level eye gaze communication software.
Mm.
I would think he may have used something like C5. So Communicator 5 is, typically used for persons that are business people that then can access using they don't use symbols, but they use a on-screen keyboard, and the on-screen
Mm.
keyboard would even then have certain key phrases. So he would just maybe type out the first two, letters of the word, and then it would, so
Oh
kind
wow.
of like predictive text in a way.
Oh.
And I'm sure because he was using it every day, he became a lot quicker. Because I mean, he
Mm.
even he was an author. He wrote a book with
Yes.
his eye gaze. So it's. I mean, I'm sure he must have gotten to gotten familiar with the eye gaze quite quickly, knowing
Oh,
his
okay.
level of IQ. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. That is all the questions that have been asked so for tonight.
Okay.
Thank you so much
Okay.
for
Great.
coming, and we really greatly appreciate the stuff that you taught us. I'm sure many of us here in the chat have not known about this. You know, for me, it was very interesting seeing how these people teach young kids and even adolescents on how to use these communicative devices. So thank you, and I'm sure all of us here have learned a great deal from your presentation tonight.
Thanks so much. I appreciate being
Thank you.
here. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you so much,
Okay.
Rushdah. Bye
Bye.
bye.